Hi everyone and welcome to your daily oracle reading. The challenge, Guardian of Air. This card is the oracle version of the classic tarot's Queen of Swords, and it represents that in the present moment you are embodying this energy. And this may not come as a big surprise because astrologically speaking, the sign of Gemini is so very empowered right now because it has its ruling planet Mercury in there, Venus retrograde, the North Node, and very soon the Sun is going to follow. And this is a very empowering energy for our intellect. But of course, you are not a person who just discovered this right now, but this goes back to a couple of months before, even extending into the last months of 2019, where you just worked so very much on your mental sphere. You try to take control of your thoughts. You try to look at everything in life. May it be something purely personal, may it be your own inner psychological configuration, may it have to do with anything regarding external reality, even science, even personal study and research of certain subjects which seemed very important and relevant to you. And all of that inner work, all of that mental discipline, all of that rationalizing everything and thinking logically and having control over your thoughts, because you discovered very quickly that your thoughts and your mental sphere has a mind of its own, if this makes sense at all, because sometimes we are not in control. It is actually the other way around, especially when certain thoughts, when certain seeds of information arise from our subconscious, or as other people call it, the unconscious, where a lot of things are stored there, and from time to time they just surface and complicate our lives. Especially when something triggers a certain pattern, when the mind can associate something, well, that always changes the inner mental picture, and you studied and worked very profoundly with the mental sphere in order to gain control, gain influence, and clarity. And I think clarity was the most important part here, because you had to figure out external reality. You had to figure out certain things in your life which didn't make sense from any single perspective, only psychologically. You kind of figured out that, researching, studying your own personal psychology and your configuration was the key to everything, to a massive progress basically, which you tried to accomplish. And you weren't wrong whatsoever, because that personal research of yours, going deep within, especially in your thoughts, in your subconscious, purging out certain elements, but more importantly, it's not just the purge, because the purge can be completed in so very many different manners, spiritually, with substances, with the help of other people, emotionally. But when you do it mentally, intellectually, when you try to rationalize the problem, when you look at the problem with the eyes of your mind, basically, well, that is one of the more significant, one of the more long lasting coping mechanisms, because once your mind grips something, it is crystal clear to it, it is solid, it can work with it, well, then that becomes not just knowledge, not just life experience, not just wisdom, but a personal methodology which can be applied in every single situation in the future, and at the same time, it can be adapted to match anything that might come up in the future. Also, what the Guardian of Air says, that because you got the chance to know yourself so profoundly, and here we are not even talking about that deep spiritual knowledge or the emotional knowledge, but rather you figured out who you were, how you work rationally, with your mental sphere, with your thoughts. So who you are is very clear to your mind, and that is a massive psychological empowerment, because ultimately knowing yourself is knowing others, and this is extremely true, and I repeat, not just from a spiritual perspective, from every single perspective, because basically, yes, we are so very, very different, but the mind works more or less the same way. So in, for example, 98% of the cases, your personal coping mechanism and methodology, for example, how you obtain mental discipline, psychological clarity, empowerment, can work for more people with slight modifications and adaptations, but still, when you see the pattern, you know exactly what that person is thinking about, what's going on inside their minds, in their lives, what their priorities are, where they are standing from. So, this is a big power and a very massive influence that you gained. And this kind of experience, knowledge, know how, mental practicality is going to be staying with you for the rest of your life, and maybe beyond that, because this isn't something that you're ever gonna forget. This is where this knowledge and mastery is going straight into your instincts, if you will, straight into your DNA, straight into the physical configuration of your neural patterns, your physical brain. So that means that your mind, your thinking is going to be adapting this each and every time without you having to do anything expressively. This is where physically, genetically, neurologically, you are embodying your wisdom, you are actively incorporating your intelligence and your experiences so that they become a free resource for you permanently. Yet still, the guardian of air is in challenge position, so that means that we have to analyze its shadow expression, its more unfavorable expressions, which means that even though you did all this work, even though you actually achieved mastery, but what you're doing with it right now is defending yourself. Defending yourself psychologically, defending yourself from information, especially chaotic, conflicting, conspiracy type of information, because in the present moment, that is the big cancer in our lives, if we can say it in this manner. Defending yourself from other people, their dramas, their mental patterns, their toxicity. So, this guardian of air is actually guarding you. It is performing her symbolism a little bit excessively, because when you're viewing the world, other people, everything in reality with a certain critical eye, because you have to, that's what it takes, you have to analyze everything, then that is taking away way too much of your energy, and that energy should be invested, at least part of it, into another expression of this guardian of air, which represents your ingenuity, which represents your inner genius, your inner Uranus, your visionary spirit, your futurism, the limitless divine mind inside of you. Because if like turn down your shield, your psychological shield, just a little bit so that it doesn't consume that much energy, so very many epiphanies, ideas, pure genius thoughts might reach you, and the cards definitely advise you to write everything down, regardless of how unusual, futuristic, or extreme a plan, project, or idea of yours is, because that is just the fertility of your mind creating certain things, and it doesn't mean that you have to start working on it in this present moment, but just because you know that the future is so uncertain and unstable, especially economically, that doesn't mean that you don't need to have the courage to make plans, to make future goals, to set new intentions, and ultimately, when you get a massive epiphany, when you get a brilliant idea, regardless if it's business, if it's something regarding your hobbies or anything, write it down, because that is alchemical gold, so to speak. Because what follows next is the Six of Earth, and this is an opportunity position. So this represents what you can accomplish with your ideas, and ultimately we're also talking about a healed, a harmonious, a very, very healthy sense of self-worth, because that is a side effect of your past mental work, self-discovery, inner journeys, where you try to best friends with your mind. For whenever we store self-defeating thoughts and bad patterns in our subconscious, that always plagues our minds, and it always comes forth as guilt, doubt, shame, and all of that. But the opposite of that is perfectly true, because when your mind rationally can have a grip on your truly healthy sense of self-worth, all the reasons why you're good, why you deserve a good life, why you're a highly skilled professional or an infinitely valuable human being, well, if your mind grips that, and not in a fiery, selfish way, but rather rationally, you know that this is the truth, this is authentic, this is basically how things are, because it's not something that you think of yourself, but you already analyzed it and made your comparisons to certain standards, and you also received feedback from others. So yes, you're standing from a place of authenticity and truth. So your self-worth, of course it's logical, of course it makes sense, because you have all the evidence, and that is stored in the brain, that is stored inside your mind. And whenever you try to have self-defeating thoughts, these positive thoughts come and save the day, because your mind will no longer tell you why you're unworthy. Whenever you think that you're unworthy, your mind is gonna come and tell you that you're very worthy because of this, and that. And if it's perfectly logical and rational, where you're gonna believe it that much more. So the opportunity is the Six of Earth, which is the card of material flow, material transactions, business, but the type of business which is full of good intent, where the basis is not gain, but rather to help others, rather to be there for a community, for other people, to share our own self-worth, to share everything that makes us valuable, that makes us worthy, that makes us talented, skilled, with other people, because by doing this, we simply express it and make the world, the community, everything that much more beautiful, that much more valuable, and that much more loving. So the connection between the two cards is that all those epiphanies, ingenious, visionary, futuristic ideas that you have during this period, if you write them down, you cannot simply know how material transaction and how economy and how values being expressed materially in the future is gonna look like. Because it may be a certain way right now, but maybe in 2021, for example, the world is going to be so very different, and where maybe the present moment, customs, rules, regulations, all of that which govern transactions and economy, if they are going to be different and futuristic and allow people like you, genius people, who have a greater saying in everything, well, then that means that your life, your flow, your transactions are going to look so very differently, and whatever ideas, genius ideas you have right now can be true gold in the future, where right now it's just alchemical gold, like symbolic value, worth. But in the future, that can be true gold, where we're not even talking about big money and big cash and big house, prosperity and whatever. We're just talking about you being a very, very important, relevant person in your connections, in your community, where the flow is going to be passing through you, And that ultimately means that you are going to have a comfortable life. So, yes, that is also prosperity because you already removed greed, you already removed that obsessive, insatiable material hunger that has been programmed into all of us. You already removed that from yourself. So basically, your prosperity is never going to reflect greed or anything like that. So don't even worry about what you're gonna have and what you're not gonna have, because when you're in a state of flow, when you give and give and give, and that giving makes you infinitely happy, well, then your life is going to be like a very well functioning and stable economy, but on your personal sphere, in your personal reality. And the resolution is the Elder of Fire, which reflects the distant future. So it doesn't end here. That's not it. Having just being in the state of flow and having a very prosperous life and being relevant and being happy with who you are, and other people being happy with who you are and they are as well, that doesn't just end here, because there's so much more to it. Because ultimately, if you start entering into your state of flow as a wise, balanced, and mentally disciplined person who has all the coping mechanisms, who has all the inner methodology to master their own beings, imagine what all of that is going to do to you during the years when you're in that permanent state of flow, when you are creating or sharing whatever you have or who you are with the world. Now that represents even more experiences. That represents that you're going to come face to face with certain situations that ultimately, of course, are going to be challenging, but this challenge is not going to be the usual suffering, blockages, pain, and stagnation, but it's going to be like having to do something monumental and titanic and accomplishing it. And every such accomplishment, may it be, for example, saving a hopeless person, or building something monumental, or contributing to something really, really big and relevant collectively. It doesn't matter what it is, but the experience of that, now that is going to be like pure food, pure vitamins for your consciousness, and ultimately they are going to turn you in the Elder of Fire, the epitome, the embodiment of the fire element. And the fire element is wisdom, it is magic, it is divine power and light, but where it is so deeply rooted already in your instinct, in the human being who you are, that you're no longer separate from the divine self. You are one entity. You are someone who is already embodying the wisdom and the light of the divine. So that means that you will no longer have to stay in the state of flow, because your status, your role is going to be something totally else, where maybe what do elders do in a society? Well, they are counselors, they are advisors, they hold knowledge over the past, present, and also the future. And with that information, with their knowledge, with whatever they embody, they feed, they sustain the young generation, they sustain the world with their inner fire, so to speak. And that is basically your very distant future. So you have everything to look forward to, and it doesn't matter if you're so blocked and if you have to defend yourself mentally in the present moment, because this is the future that you have already created for yourself, and you are already possessing the key to unlocking this door. Just wait for the most appropriate opportunity. And if you have any ideas, epiphanies, plans, like that spark of divine genius, write it down, preserve it, make sure you don't forget it. Well, thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for all your love and support. Wish everyone a fantastic day. Bye for now.